Is a bike fit worth it? Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Wait, all right, come back. Let me tell you why I think a bike fit is totally worth it. And there are lots of ways to go about it. Different shops will have different methods. Some places you'll go to will just use a couple of pieces of string and a protractor. Other places will, scan you, and other places will bring out the lasers and the dots, and it'll be super space age and a crazy experiment. At the same time, you gotta imagine there are different price points for these fits, right? Like some fits can be as simple as $100, other fits more mid-range like $250, and top of the line fit $400 to $500. Now, I'm not gonna tell you how much to spend on a fit because that's really personal. My budget is different from your budget, but what's really important is that you do have a bike that does fit you. While we're at it, there are definitely some tried and true methods to get pretty close that you can do at home and spend absolutely nothing. And spoiler, that's how I've been operating for a number of years. It's been a real long time since I last had a proper fit, and so much has changed. I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've become more flexible, I've become more athletic. I still ride the same frame size, that didn't change, my bone structure and all that didn't change. However, my reach and flexibility have changed considerably, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but a couple of centimeters, a few degrees, does make a huge difference when you're spending 2, 3, 4 hours on the bike at a time.
What it do?
But going back to the beginning, 2010, I had a very basic bike fit. And that's all I was looking for. That's all I needed. They measured me up from drop down center of the crank to the top of the saddle. And that measurement needed to line up with making sure that my knees had a slight bend in it, like fully extended, but a slight bend, and measured my reach to make sure I could reach the brake safely and basically ride in the hoods the whole time. And that's at the top of the bars. That's all I was looking for at the time. I wasn't spending any time in the drops. I wasn't spending any time in an aero position. I was not spending more than an hour on the bike. So that's all I really needed. And if that's where you are, I still do recommend at least getting a fit to make sure that you are buying the right frame size bike. A lot of shops will kind of help you out as part of the bike buying process, but once you have that, it's kind of like getting measured for a suit, right? Once you have those measurements, you can take them anywhere else and then kind of get the tailor to custom fit all the other little bits. So instead of just shopping for, ooh, I like this bike, let's get your measurements first and then fit you into the bike that will fit you. And I know you want something that's more your personality, the color's gotta be right, and plenty of those exist. That's why I've operated with, I had my basic fit, and from there I knew what frame size to get, and then I could make a couple of adjustments, a couple of rudimentary adjustments from my saddle height to different angles of the stem to get it just right. But all those things that I knew about a rudimentary fit only really applied to a road bike. Now I'm on a TT bike, and that fit is very different. So I had been spending a lot of time on the trainer, getting comfortable, and I've made some adjustments, got some things pretty close, but it still wasn't quite right. And I don't know about you, if you're gonna be spending, 3 hours at a time doing anything, it's gotta be just right.
70% here, 30% in the back. So when you're pedaling, you're not pushing down like you would be on a thing. You're actually kind of pushing back a little bit, okay? So the theory behind a tri-bike is that your positioning is a little different. So you're more forward on the bike and you're using a different muscle. So when you get onto your run, you're gonna, well, I don't know about fresh, but better than if you were getting off of a road bike.
Now, the very first thing that needed to be addressed was my cleat position. We got the markers at the balls of my feet and then kind of set up the right angle and the right distance, even tweaked the float a little bit. We'll talk about that later, but tightened up the float too. Now, one of the first things I noticed when I got on this bike as I was buying it, and I just didn't know, was that my knees were clipping the back end of the aero bar cups. And you know, I knew that couldn't be a good thing, but I thought maybe I was just a little too forward. And at the same time, when I got down in the aero position, I just felt like I needed a little bit more bar. Turns out the stem was too short. I was riding on a 100mm stem, I needed a 120. So we made that change, and right away, I felt so much better on the reach. And then that led to looking at the angle of my aero bars. You know, I had my wrist turned down on the aero bars previously to try to hang on, and that just wasn't very comfortable. I made it work, but now that we're getting the fit, oh, look at this. That changes independently, so we got the angles up like maybe 2 degrees, but those 2 degrees made such a huge difference in relieving the pressure in my wrist to my forearm, which traveled all the way up to my shoulders, which again, doesn't sound like a big deal for 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes. By 2.5 hours, oh. So we finally got that sorted out. And the cherry on top was getting my fore aft adjusted on the saddle, you know, just sliding it just a snooch back and turning the angle just a scotch down to relieve that pressure in that sensitive area. And whew, now I was already fairly comfortable, but I did get back on it and it just felt amazing. I did mention the float. When your foot is clipped into your pedals, there is a certain degree of wiggle you can get in your foot, and I had it fairly loosey-goosey. There was some play there. I was never really excited about that level of float, and you can just switch to a different set of cleats altogether. Some have more float, more give than others, and some are dead solid. There's no give at all. I wanted something with a little bit of give, but kind of tightening it up a little bit, being on the firmer side. So once I am clipped in and planted, I am not wasting any power, and there is none of that lateral movement that is basically a wasted action. I just want to be going like this and not like that on the pedal strokes. So we got all of these things dialed in. Something I didn't mention is when you do get a bike fit, that's just for the numbers. Parts are a whole other thing. So I did need a new stem, and as it turns out, that's about all I needed. But in some cases, you may choose to also get a different saddle. Maybe your crank length may not be the right length for you to get to the optimal position. Maybe you need a narrower bar. Maybe you need a wider bar. All of these things, like they're very customizable, and you can definitely make it your own depending on what you need. I was fortunate enough to know some of these rules of thumbs that I could apply generally, and this just took it to the next level to finally lock things down and get a more optimal position.
Man, that was a process. Glad we went through it. Nothing too crazy, but I definitely needed a longer stem, which, I suspected something was off with the reach, but I thought that was more of a seat fore aft, which also needed adjustment, but the stem was just flat out too short, so we went from 100 to 120. Boom, got some new tape.
Against better judgment, I went with the white bar tape anyway. It's gonna look fantastic for like 2 weeks. Yeah, maybe 3 rides. But it'll be real pretty for when it's pretty.
But we're not done, because I also need to get this thing outside and spend some time riding on it and figure out if this is actually right. Because spending an hour in the shop, getting on the bike, off the bike, on the bike, off the bike, that only tells you so much. You won't know how comfortable or uncomfortable you actually are until a lot later in the ride and over several rides. So we're gonna try to get back out this weekend and, you know, see how things go. That was with the TT bike. Turns out after we did all that, I brought my road bike in too, and there were a couple of tweaks to make there as well. And I had it pretty close, same deal. There are some of these principles that you can follow and you can do yourself at home. And I'll link to a video that, you know, showed me some of these things. I wanna say it was a GCN video, I'll look it up, that gave me some of those pointers for like how to DIY your bike fit. But if you really are going to take this seriously, I would highly advise that you get into a shop, you get measured, and I don't care if it's a old school string and protractor measurement or if it's a space age, I've got all the lasers and pressure points and a wind tunnel kind of fit. Just get fit, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be so much better than just kind of eyeballing and kind of figuring it out. But that's me. What about you? How long have you guys been riding? And when was the last time you've been fit, if ever? Do you ever notice any discomfort when you're in the saddle? Do you feel any neck pain, any back pain, any knee pain? These are telltale signs that your fit may not be as optimal or just flat out wrong for you. Before you pack it in and think that cycling is not for you, I would highly recommend getting some sort of fit to make sure that you are in fact on the right bike. If you've liked this one, maybe check out the other video that I've made about some of the principles of cycling. If you're looking to get started, some of the things that have helped me really get into the sport, fit is definitely one of them. And just a couple of things that I've come across throughout the years of cycling that I'd like to share with you, or go through the menu and see what else you might like. Either way, thanks so much for watching this one. Till next time, it's been real.